Dispute resolutions and legal remedies are available to all tenants. However, they're not always the best route to go. So today, stay with us as we dive into this discussion about dispute resolutions with a tenant and a landlord. Kendall, I really like your analogy that you gave to me, the breakdown of when a tenant really needs to go pursue legal action and when not. Why don't you go ahead and explain that?
Yeah, so there's kind of like three levels of dispute resolution and legal remedies that are available to a tenant. And it's my personal opinion that the majority can and should be resolved directly between the two parties. It's the no-cost approach, right? If that doesn't work, then the next option is when you involve a third party, like a mediator or even an attorney can start to get involved. Sometimes there's no cost to low cost mediation, but usually mediation and or legal services do cost money, so there's a consideration there of how important is that resolution.
Yeah.
And then if that doesn't work, then the third one is more of aggressive, involves more attorneys, and can get expensive, especially if you're not the prevailing party. Prevailing means that you win your suit, right? So as a consultation with a prospective tenant, it's really important that they understand, well, how do I start resolution on my own? Yeah. And it literally is this simple. Call up your landlord, have a very open, honest discussion.
It's a thing we push all the time.
It
Communicate.
is. And it's important that you give them the full information. Don't try and give them only half the story, right? Thinking that if I tell them everything that I'm going to be at risk or whatever, because they have to make a decision because they're bound by the terms of the lease, right?
Yeah, because landlords are representing their sellers, right? So they have to do what's in the contract. So,
yeah. So the contract is kind of like the framework, but let's say that you have an issue that's come up that you need to get resolved. You know, using the framework of the lease directly with the landlord property manager is the best approach, because if they understand really what the issue is, they can then best help resolve it, right? Let's say an issue comes up.
Yeah, there's like a million issues out there that this could arise.
Yeah. Well, let's say that there's a problem between you and your next door neighbor, right? And you need to get out of the lease because of the conflict with the next door neighbor. This is probably an extreme example, but if the landlord understands what the issue is, then they're more likely to work with you in the framework of the lease and find a solution that works for you, right?
So I love the book. I don't know if you've ever read this book, but it's Crucial Conversations.
Okay.
So it's a phenomenal book, and it talks about how to have like these difficult conversations with other people. And not that every conversation has to be a difficult one, but there has to be communication. There has to be from the start to finish. So I like that a lot. Like, let's communicate, let's lay out the picture and what you're faced with, and then hopefully your landlord can now step in and help you through the situation.
Yeah, once they understand the whole perspective, then they can come back and say, well, here's what we can do, right? And the whole idea is you have to remember the landlord doesn't want to have a vacancy. He doesn't want to see you suffer. He doesn't want to, because those are challenges, right? Yeah. At the end of the day, he just wants to make sure that the rent is collected to the best possible way for the benefit of the homeowner who he represents. But at the same time, he's a human being and can see that you have a need, right? So let's take that the scenario of you've got a conflict with the neighbor and you need to find a way to get out of the lease. There's remedies built into your lease, and once the landlord knows that, he can work through it. But let's say that at some point he says, you know what, it's not my problem. I can't help you out on the no cost or the first approach, and now we have to go to a mediation, right? Again, the mediator is still going to use the lease as a framework. And again, full disclosure of what the issues are is going to be critical out there. The difference is the landlord at the onset doesn't want to make any concessions to make it work. Yeah. But the mediator might come back and say, well, here's the concessions that can work, possibly, and gives the landlord kind of a framework of, if we don't do this, then it's going to escalate to here. And so they can put a frame there better for the landlord to understand out there. So in all three phases, the principles are the same of full disclosure, communication, but keep in mind, if you don't get your way, doesn't mean you should escalate to the next thing. Because I think it's important to understand that if you go into a dispute resolution with open mind, that you may be what the problem is, right? Just because you don't hear the answer you want to hear doesn't mean that you're right and no one else is listening to you.
Right.
It means that what you're looking for, asking for, isn't doable in the framework of the lease.
Going into any scenario with an open mind and an attitude of let's work this out is going to be far better for anybody than I need to win and you're not cooperating with me. You know, so.
Because if you're wrong and you still want to go through and pay out fees to the lawyers in the court process and still be wrong, all you're doing is you're compounding the inevitable, right? So I think it's important to keep that open mind through the entire process. And this isn't just for the tenants, but it's for the landlords as well.
And that's actually the third thing would be full-on court, lawsuit, expensive.
Yeah, because let's say that you stop paying your rents through this process, and you end up still losing, or even winning. The court still might reward the other party those back rents, right? And so it can become very expensive for you because the basis comes down to the framework of that lease. Even the courts have to follow what's written there. That's called, in real estate terms, it's called statute of frauds, where everything in real estate has to be done in writing, and the courts are bound by the terms of the lease as long as they're legal. Now, a court has some jurisdiction; they can strike certain things of a contract if they aren't clear enough or whatnot, but at the same time, it's very expensive. Or it can be very expensive to go that route.
Well, it's a good discussion. I don't think I guess there are overall a lot of problems that happen. Our goal is to help you avoid them. There's probably a lot of lawsuits. You may or may not be facing a legal issue with your landlord. You might have a great relationship with your landlord, but if there's a problem that you see facing or you know somebody else who's facing it, we hope Tenant Solutions is a way to address these concerns or issues at a very minimal cost. Let us help you. Let us have the discussion and see if it can help you resolve it. Communicate, though. Number one, communicate. So let's go through them again.
Yeah,
sorry.
It's a proactive approach.
Yeah. So first of all, communicate. That's the first. First form
going
of
direct on
resolution.
your own, being upfront, honest, and full disclosure.
The second is a
Mediator.
mediation.
Yeah, and that can be a professional mediation organization, or it could also be through attorneys. One's less expensive than the other.
There might be a chance to use a realtor or the board of realtors in your area.
They have some mediation services.
They have services too. And then the third is
full-on
court.
Legal court, where both sides have their attorneys and they're billing you at some $100 per hour, whatever it might be. If you feel like your rights are being trampled on, or if the lease is not in your favor unfairly, don't be afraid to go through the courts. If you feel like you're right and you know you're right, it's okay to do that.
A lot of people don't want it. They get walked all over because they want to avoid an issue, but we want to help you, of course, avoid that. But you do have rights and ways to mitigate these issues that come up. So we're glad you're with us, and let us know if you have more questions about these issues or others that come up.